Billionaire insults black waitress in Japanese, stunned when she replies perfectly and calls him out. Do you even understand what you're saying, or are you just trying to make a fool of yourself? The words cut sharper than the silver knife he held for his morning omelet. Marcus Whitmore, one of the youngest billionaires in the world, leaned back in his chair at the upscale Tokyo cafe, smirking as he stared down at the waitress. His tone dripped with condescension, but the language, it wasn't English. It was Japanese, precise, calculated, and laced with insult. Kendra James froze for a heartbeat. She had heard Japanese in passing during her college courses and through her love for anime, but she had never expected to face it in a real-world confrontation, especially not from a man whose aura screamed untouchable wealth and authority. Around her, the cafe buzzed with the soft clinking of porcelain cups, murmurs of other patrons, and the faint hiss of the espresso machine. Yet all that faded into background noise as Marcus's words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. She straightened her back, gripping the tray in her hands a little tighter, and met his eyes. The world seemed to pause. She could feel the pulse of adrenaline pumping through her veins, the fire of defiance sparking in her chest. Then she replied, flawless and confident, in the same language. The translation floated silently over the table, invisible to most but unmistakable in its weight. Sir, with all due respect, the way you speak is inappropriate. I am here working as a professional. For a fraction of a second, Marcus blinked, his smirk faltering. His eyes narrowed, a flicker of surprise, and perhaps even respect, crossing his face. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Certainly not a waitress, certainly not someone who clearly had nothing but a paycheck to her name. He was used to people trembling, apologizing, or laughing nervously at his sarcasm. Kendra James had done none of that. She had stood tall, unflinching, and returned the insult in perfect Japanese, calling him out in his own words. The cafe went quiet. A group of businessmen paused mid-conversation, their attention subtly shifting toward the tense exchange. The barista behind the counter froze, mid-pour, eyes wide. Kendra could feel the weight of every gaze, the silent tension vibrating through the room. Marcus finally broke the silence, laughing a low, incredulous laugh that carried the kind of disbelief only money and power could buy. Well, aren't you something? He muttered, his voice softening slightly, though the arrogance remained. I didn't expect that. Kendra kept her composure, though her heart hammered like a drum. She had prepared for difficult customers, for rude ones, but never someone like him. A billionaire used to getting his way, speaking a language she knew well enough to respond, but sophisticated enough that a mistake could ruin her. And yet, here she was, standing her ground. I expect respect from everyone here, sir, she added, her voice steady. Not because I am a waitress, but because respect is due to every human being. Marcus leaned forward, intrigued now, curiosity flickering across his face. His previous contempt had shifted into something more complicated, a mix of amusement, surprise, and a hint of challenge. He leaned on the table, resting his hand over his expensive watch, and studied her like a rare art piece that had just revealed an unexpected detail. You speak Japanese very well. Not many Americans can, he said, a subtle acknowledgement slipping into his tone. There was no arrogance in the compliment, only curiosity. Kendra allowed herself a small nod. I studied it for years. And I also studied respect, sir. I've learned that it's more important than money or status. His eyes narrowed again, this time not with hostility, but with a challenge of his own. He was not used to being confronted, especially not with intellect and courage that matched his own presence. He smiled now, but it was cautious, like someone trying to test the waters before jumping into deep seas. Interesting, he murmured, leaning back and finally letting out a sigh that seemed like a release of the tension that had gripped him. He had expected to dominate this interaction, to assert power effortlessly, and yet here he was, sitting across from someone who had not only understood him, but had also answered in a way that commanded his attention. Kendra felt a strange mix of triumph and anxiety. She had held her ground, but now something had shifted. The stakes had escalated beyond a simple rude customer. She could sense that Marcus Whitmore was assessing her, weighing her words, and perhaps, just perhaps, reconsidering everything he thought he knew about people beneath his social and financial sphere. The moment was broken by the soft chime of the door as another customer entered, drawing glances away, but the energy between the two of them lingered like a charged wire. Marcus's smirk returned, faint but deliberate, as if acknowledging that this encounter was far from over. Kendra placed the tray down with a calm grace, though her hands still trembled slightly from the adrenaline. She turned to leave, expecting him to resume his arrogance, but he spoke again, this time softer, almost thoughtful. "Wait," he said. "You have a spine I don't often see. Not here, not anywhere. What's your name?" Kendra paused mid-step, looking over her shoulder, and answered simply, "Kendra James." Marcus's eyes lingered on her, and for the first time, she saw a spark of genuine interest, curiosity, respect, maybe even admiration. It was dangerous to read too much into a billionaire's gaze, yet in that split second, Kendra felt something shift. Something was changing, and neither of them could quite put a finger on it. The cafe's hum resumed, people quietly returning to their routines, but for Kendra and Marcus, the encounter had already rewritten the rules. A black waitress in Tokyo had stood up to a billionaire in a way that defied expectation, in a language that wasn't hers by birth, and in doing so, had unknowingly opened a door to something far bigger than a single meal or a fleeting insult. And as she walked away, the echo of her own words lingering in the air, Kendra didn't know that this moment, this singular act of courage, was about to set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. Kendra James wiped down the last of the tables, her mind still buzzing from the encounter with Marcus Whitmore. The cafe had returned to its normal rhythm, the soft jazz playing over the speakers and the faint hiss of the espresso machine. Yet she felt a lingering weight in her chest, a mix of adrenaline, pride, and something she couldn't quite name. She had handled rude customers before. She had dealt with entitled clients, loud businessmen, and even people who thought their wealth gave them the right to belittle her. But Marcus Whitmore was different. Not just because he was a billionaire, but because he had underestimated her so completely, and she had not only met his challenge, but outshone it. Kendra's co-workers whispered behind her back as she cleared the last tray. "Wow, did you hear her speak?" one of them said, eyes wide. "She just shut him down." Another nodded, still staring at the door Marcus had exited through. "Who even is that guy?" Kendra shrugged, trying to mask the fluttering in her stomach. "Someone who clearly doesn't know who he's messing with," she said, forcing a laugh, though her hands still trembled slightly. She cleaned up the counter, stacking plates and polishing the cutlery, when her phone buzzed. She glanced down to see an unknown number flashing across the screen. Curious, she answered. "Hello, Kendra James." The voice was smooth, calm, and unmistakably male. It carried a tone of authority she recognized immediately. "Yes, speaking." "This is Marcus Whitmore," he said. Kendra froze for a heartbeat, her heart thudding so loudly she was sure the barista could hear it. "I'd like to meet with you. Privately." She blinked. "Excuse me." "I said I'd like to meet with you," he repeated, calm and deliberate. "I've never encountered someone with your courage. Intelligence. I want to discuss a business opportunity with you. It's nothing to do with your job here, yet." Kendra's mind raced. Was this a prank? A trap? Billionaires didn't just randomly call waitresses for opportunities. And yet, something in his voice made her hesitate. It wasn't arrogance, not this time. There was a quiet respect, a spark of curiosity, that made her pulse quicken. I don't know," she said cautiously. "I'm just a waitress. I don't." "You're more than that," he interrupted, his voice soft but firm. "Trust me. If you come, you'll understand." The line went silent for a moment, and then he added almost casually, "Meet me at the Shibuya Sky Lounge tomorrow at noon. If you decide not to, that's fine. I won't contact you again." The call ended before Kendra could respond. She sat down, stunned, trying to process what had just happened. Her mind raced through possibilities. This was insane. But part of her, the part that had always dreamed bigger than her paycheck, bigger than her small apartment and long shifts, wanted to say yes. The next morning, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time she rehearsed what she might say, her stomach twisted with nerves. By the time her shift ended, she knew she had to see him. She dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that balanced professionalism with confidence, and took a deep breath as she stepped into the bustling streets of Shibuya. The Sky Lounge was perched high above the city, glass walls giving a panoramic view of Tokyo. The air was crisp, the skyline glittering with morning light, reflecting off the skyscrapers. Kendra stepped inside, and the scent of expensive perfume and polished wood hit her immediately. She felt out of place, but also, strangely, exactly where she needed to be. Marcus was already there, standing near the window, with his back to her. When he turned, his eyes found hers immediately, and there was a flicker of something in his gaze that made her pulse quicken. Approval, interest, curiosity. He gestured toward the seating area. "Kendra," he said, his voice calmer than she remembered. "Thank you for coming." She hesitated for a moment before sitting. "I'm curious why you called me here," she said cautiously, keeping her tone neutral. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on the table, his gaze intense. "Because you surprised me yesterday. Most people don't. They either cower, laugh nervously, or fight back without thinking. You spoke confidently, respectfully, and with intelligence. That's rare." Kendra blinked, caught off guard by the compliment. "Thank you, I try my best." He smiled faintly. "It's more than trying. You understand people. You understand respect. You see past surface appearances. That's exactly why I need to speak with you." Her curiosity grew, and despite the caution she felt, she leaned in slightly. "Speak with me about what?" Marcus's expression grew serious. "About a project I'm working on. Something that could change lives. But more importantly, I think you could help me make it work. I want your perspective, your honesty. And yes, I'll admit it, I want to see how someone like you thinks." Kendra's brow furrowed. "Someone like me? I'm just a waitress, Mr. Whitmore. I don't." "You are not just a waitress, Kendra," he interrupted gently, yet firmly. "You've got insight most people in boardrooms lack. You challenge assumptions without arrogance. You see people for who they are, not for what they own or what they appear to be. That's rare. And right now, it's exactly what I need." Kendra felt a lump in her throat. She had never had anyone speak to her this way, with such respect, such acknowledgement. It was humbling, confusing, and thrilling. Marcus stood and walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window, gesturing toward the sprawling city below. "I want you to think about it, Kendra. This isn't a job. This isn't a favor. This is an opportunity to see a world you've only dreamed about and to impact it. I'll give you time, but not too much. Life doesn't wait." Kendra sat in stunned silence, her mind racing. The man who had insulted her, who had challenged her in front of everyone, who had seemed untouchable, was now offering her a chance, an opportunity that could change everything. As she left the Sky Lounge later that afternoon, her steps were unsteady with the mix of excitement and fear. She had a decision to make, one that could take her far beyond the confines of the cafe, far beyond the life she had always known. And deep down, she knew that once she stepped into Marcus Whitmore's world, nothing would ever be the same again. The twist was no longer just in words or insults, it was in the choice she had to make. And Kendra James was no stranger to defying expectations. Kendra couldn't sleep that night. Her tiny apartment felt unusually oppressive, the hum of the city outside her window matching the whirl of thoughts in her head. Marcus Whitmore. The name alone made her pulse quicken. She kept replaying their encounter at the Sky Lounge, trying to separate reality from the surreal. Could this billionaire, this man whose wealth and influence she had only seen in headlines and business magazines, actually be interested in her perspective? Could he actually value her intelligence over her job title? The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. By morning, Kendra knew she had a choice to make. She could continue her life as it had been, long shifts, tight tips, invisible in the background, or she could step into a world completely unknown, a world that promised risk, intrigue, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to rewrite her story. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and decided to go. When she arrived at the Shibuya Sky Lounge the next day, Marcus was already waiting, leaning casually against the marble countertop near the entrance. The morning sunlight hit the glass behind him, making his hair glint as if he were carved out of light. He greeted her with the same calm, measured tone from before. "Kendra," he said, nodding. "I'm glad you came." "Me too," she replied cautiously, trying to hide the nervous tremor in her voice. "Although I still don't understand why." Marcus's lips quirked into a faint smile. "All will be revealed. But first, I need to see something. Your instincts, your intuition." Kendra raised an eyebrow. "My instincts?" "Yes. I want to test how you handle pressure, how you think on your feet. If you're willing to accept the opportunity, I need to know I can trust your judgment, your insight. Today is the first test." She hesitated. This wasn't exactly what she had expected. "A test," she repeated. "A challenge," Marcus corrected, his voice calm but sharp. "A real challenge. Nothing academic, nothing scripted. Just life, observed through your eyes." Before Kendra could ask more, he handed her a sleek envelope. Open it when you're alone. She slipped it into her bag, her hands shaking slightly. Once she found a quiet corner overlooking the city, she tore it open. Inside was a single piece of paper with a cryptic message. Observe, interpret, decide. Lives may depend on your judgment. Her heart thudded, so hard she was sure it could be heard over the city hum. Beneath the note was a QR code. Curious, she scanned it, and her phone directed her to a live feed. On the screen was a street in a nearby district. People were bustling through their morning routines, but her attention was immediately drawn to a small commotion. A man was struggling with a child on a crowded street, a wallet being snatched from his grasp. A woman nearby was shouting, trying to get help, but no one seemed to notice. Kendra's mind raced. Was this real? Was this staged? She looked back at the note. Lives may depend on your judgment. Her instinct took over. She opened a mapping app and traced the street in real time. She could see a restaurant near the scene, a small shop, and a busy intersection. Her pulse quickened. Something about this felt urgent, authentic. She hesitated only for a second before making a decision. She typed a message into the live feed's interface. Send help to the intersection immediately. Notify authorities. Do not intervene directly if unsafe. Immediately, a voice responded through her phone. Action received. Monitoring your judgment. Kendra felt a chill run down her spine. She had no idea what she had just stepped into, yet she realized that Marcus Whitmore had chosen her because she could think clearly under pressure. Her heart pounded in her chest, but there was a strange sense of exhilaration too, a realization that her perspective mattered in a way she had never known. A few minutes later, the feed shifted. The situation had resolved quickly. Authorities arrived, the child was safe, and the commotion had ended without anyone injured. Kendra exhaled deeply, relief washing over her in waves. She had passed the first test, though she wasn't sure what the consequences would be. A notification popped up on her phone. Good judgment. Proceed to the next stage. Her stomach tightened. She didn't know what next stage meant, but she felt herself pulled deeper into Marcus Whitmore's world, a world where intelligence and courage mattered more than status, money, or appearance. When she returned to the Sky Lounge, Marcus was waiting. He didn't speak immediately, letting her catch her breath as she approached. Finally, he nodded once sharply, a gesture of approval that sent a shiver down her spine. You handled that well, he said, his voice calm but carrying weight. Most people would have panicked, frozen, or acted recklessly. You made the right call. That matters. That matters more than you know. Kendra swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. I just did what I thought was right. Exactly, Marcus said, leaning back against the counter with a small, satisfied smile. Exactly. That's why I reached out to you. That's why you're here. Most people see chaos and freeze. You see it, assess it, and make decisions that protect lives. That's rare, and it's exactly what I need for a project I'm leading. She felt her pulse quicken. A project, she repeated. What kind of project? Marcus's eyes softened slightly, as if gauging how much she could handle. It's a humanitarian initiative, Kendra. Something that affects thousands of lives. But I need people I can trust, people who think critically under pressure. And right now, I need you. Kendra felt a lump in her throat. She had never expected this. She had never imagined that standing up to a rude billionaire could lead to something so life-altering. Her mind flashed back to the cafe, to the moment she had spoken Japanese and called him out. That act, simple as it seemed, had set her on this path. Marcus leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. I won't lie to you. This won't be easy. There will be pressure, challenges, mistakes, and risks. But I believe you can handle it. You've already proven that. Kendra felt a mix of fear and excitement churn inside her. This was bigger than anything she had ever imagined. She had gone from serving coffee to making decisions that could impact lives in an instant. She realized something profound. Her courage, her intelligence, her voice, it had power. Real power. As she left the Sky Lounge that day, her mind was ablaze with possibilities. She had passed the first test, but she knew the next stages would push her even further. Marcus Whitmore's world was not just about wealth. It was about responsibility, judgment, and the courage to act when it mattered most. And Kendra James, a black waitress from Tokyo with a dream bigger than her paycheck, had just realized that her life was about to change forever. The first test was over. But the real journey, the one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself and the world, was only beginning. Kendra couldn't stop thinking about the test. Her mind replayed every detail, every decision she had made, and every instant she had felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. She had acted quickly, decisively, and yet she felt unprepared for what was coming next. Marcus Whitmore's words had carried a promise. The next stage would be more challenging. Far more challenging. She arrived at the Sky Lounge again the following morning, feeling a strange mixture of anticipation and anxiety. The lobby was quiet, almost eerily calm. Marcus was already there, as always, leaning casually against the glass wall, the city sprawling beneath him, like a living painting. "Kendra," he said softly, noticing her approach. "Good morning. Ready for stage 2? "I think so," she replied, though her voice carried a tremor of doubt. "I'm not sure what to expect, but I'm ready to try." Marcus nodded. His expression softened for a moment, the weight of something unspoken lingering in his eyes. "Stage 2 isn't about judgment alone," he explained as they walked toward the private lounge area. "It's about empathy, perception, and understanding the human element in situations where most people only see numbers or outcomes." Kendra's brow furrowed. "The human element?" "Yes," Marcus said, stopping near the window, overlooking the bustling streets of Shibuya. "Most people in my world forget that wealth is meaningless without understanding the people it affects. Your task today is not theoretical. It's personal." He handed her another envelope. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, revealing a set of photographs, detailed notes, and a small USB drive. At first glance, it looked like ordinary intelligence material, reports, social data, brief profiles. But as Kendra scanned the documents, her heart sank. The subjects weren't corporations or financial ventures. They were people, families, individuals struggling in ways the world often ignored. The first photo caught her eye. A young girl in a wheelchair looking out of a small apartment window. Her mother's expression was exhausted, strained. The notes described financial hardships, medical needs, and bureaucratic barriers that threatened the girl's access to care. Kendra's chest tightened. She had grown up in a modest household, seen hardship and struggle firsthand, but nothing prepared her for the weight of responsibility in Marcus's hands, or now in hers. "What do I do?" she whispered, almost afraid to speak the words aloud. "Observe," Marcus said gently. "Understand. Empathize. Then act. This isn't about giving money blindly. It's about seeing what people need, what they truly need, and deciding how to make the most impact. This is the real stage. The one that will test your heart, not just your mind." Kendra nodded, though her hands shook slightly. She opened the USB drive and saw a short video file. Hesitating, she pressed play. The video was of a mother struggling to care for her 2 children. Bills were piled on the table, a medical device for the youngest child beeped faintly in the background, and the mother's expression was one of quiet despair. Kendra felt a lump in her throat. She could see fear, love, exhaustion, and hope all at once. Her first instinct was to feel helpless. How could she, a single waitress, make a difference in a situation so enormous, so complicated? But then Marcus's words came back to her. Observe. Empathize. Decide. Lives depend on your judgment. She took a deep breath and began to analyze the situation. The mother's stress came not from lack of care, but from lack of access. Resources were available, but bureaucratic obstacles and miscommunication kept her from receiving them. Kendra's mind raced, connecting dots, seeing patterns, and envisioning solutions that didn't just involve money, but action, advocacy, and coordination. Marcus watched silently from across the room, letting her process without interference. There was a subtle respect in his gaze, a recognition that he had chosen someone capable of seeing beyond the obvious. Hours passed as Kendra worked. She wrote plans, drafted outreach ideas, identified key contacts, and even scripted potential interventions that could help the family immediately. Every decision she made, every suggestion she formulated carried weight. And for the first time in her life, she felt the power of her voice, not just to be heard, but to create tangible change. When she finally looked up, Marcus was smiling. But wasn't the faint, casual smile from before. It was softer, almost vulnerable, as if he had been waiting for someone to reach this point. "You've done well, Kendra," he said quietly. "Far beyond what I expected. Most people would have given up halfway through or simply proposed surface-level solutions. You saw the heart of the problem." Kendra felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. I just try to think of what I would want if it were my family," she admitted. "That's exactly it," Marcus said, nodding slowly. "Empathy, understanding, action. That's rare in my world. and it's why you're here." For a moment there was silence. Kendra realized something important. Marcus wasn't just testing her intelligence or judgment. He was testing her heart. And in that moment, she felt a connection she couldn't explain. A bond built not on money, status, or power, but on mutual respect and recognition of shared humanity. Then, almost unexpectedly, Marcus's tone shifted, becoming lighter, teasing even. Not many people would have had the courage to come here again, let alone tackle what you just did. You're extraordinary, Kendra. Her cheeks flushed. "I'm just me," she said softly. He shook his head. "No, you're more than that. You're someone who could change the world, if given the chance. And I think I'm going to help you see that." Kendra's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected encouragement, certainly not from Marcus Whitmore. She had expected challenges, tests, maybe even ridicule. But now, she realized, the billionaire who had insulted her in Japanese, who had seemed untouchable, was offering her something more profound: belief. As she left the Sky Lounge that afternoon, the city below her seemed different. Brighter. Full of possibilities she hadn't dared imagine before. She understood now that Marcus's challenges were more than tests, they were invitations. Invitations to grow, to learn, to see the impact of her choices. And deep inside, Kendra felt the stirring of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that she could do more than serve coffee. Hope that her voice mattered. Hope that one brave act, one refusal to be intimidated, could ripple into a life she had only dreamed of. But as she walked the streets of Shibuya, she couldn't shake the thought that the real test, the one that would challenge her courage, her heart, and her very sense of self, was still waiting. And when it came, she knew she would have to face it head-on. Because Marcus Whitmore wasn't just testing her intelligence. He was testing her humanity. And in that challenge, Kendra James would either rise, or everything she had fought for would crumble. The city of Tokyo was alive with motion as Kendra stepped out of the Sky Lounge that evening. Neon lights flickered to life against the dusk sky, reflecting in puddles from an earlier rain. The world felt larger somehow, more unpredictable, and she realized she could no longer see herself in the same way. The challenges Marcus Whitmore had set were changing her, teaching her, testing her. Her phone buzzed, dragging her attention back. It was a message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the Tokyo Station Lounge. Urgent." Kendra hesitated, recalling the previous tests. Every time she had followed Marcus's instructions, the outcome had been life-altering. She glanced around the crowded street, feeling both fear and excitement coil inside her chest. Finally, she replied simply, "On my way." The train ride was a blur of neon reflections and scattered thoughts. Kendra kept replaying the last challenge, the family in need, the decisions she had made. She realized something profound. Marcus wasn't just testing her skills. He was pushing her to confront the human cost of the world he moved in, a world of wealth and power that often ignored those most in need. At the station lounge, Marcus was already waiting. His usual confident demeanor was present, but there was a subtle tension in his eyes that Kendra had never noticed before. He gestured for her to sit, and she obeyed, heart pounding. "Kendra," he began, voice unusually solemn. "Today's challenge is different. It's not about strategy or empathy alone. It's about trust and truth." She blinked, uncertain. "Trust and truth." He nodded. "There are things in my life that most people don't see. Decisions I've made, mistakes I've tried to hide, and consequences I've hoped others wouldn't notice. I need someone who can understand, not judge, not flinch, but understand, and I think you're ready for that." Kendra's curiosity burned. "You want me to know your secrets?" she asked softly. "Yes," he said, leaning forward. "I've chosen you because you've shown courage, intelligence, and heart. But above all, I need honesty from you and from me. And that's what today is about. You will see me as I am, without the masks, without the wealth, without the reputation. And I need to know if you can handle that truth." He handed her a folder. Kendra opened it carefully. Inside were documents, photographs, and notes, some professional, others deeply personal. There were records of Marcus's early business deals, ventures that had succeeded and failed, and more disturbingly, a private investigation into his own family's hidden debts and betrayals. The weight of it was almost suffocating. "Why show me this?" she asked, voice trembling slightly. "Because I need your judgment, Kendra," he said softly. "Not your loyalty, not your admiration. Your judgment. The world I live in, it's easy to be blinded by money, by influence, by fear. But you see clearly." Kendra's mind raced. This was no longer a test of skill or empathy. It was a test of integrity. Could she navigate the world of secrets and lies without losing herself? Could she face someone who had everything, power, wealth, influence, and still see the truth behind their actions? Marcus leaned back, watching her carefully. I need to know if I can trust you to see the reality of people, of situations, without being swayed by status or fear. This family, my company, my mistakes, they are all connected. And soon, the consequences will demand action. Kendra swallowed hard, feeling a tight knot form in her stomach. This wasn't about a single decision anymore. This was about navigating a minefield where a single misstep could ruin lives, including her own. What exactly do you want me to do? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I want you to analyze this, Marcus said, gesturing to the folder. See the connections. Identify the risks. And most importantly, advise me honestly. I'm not asking for flattery, Kendra. I'm asking for truth. Can you handle that? She nodded slowly, though uncertainty churned in her chest. I'll do my best, she said. Marcus gave a faint smile, though it lacked its usual confidence. Good. Your first task is to review the documents and flag any potential threats. People, finances, personal connections, anything that could spiral out of control if mishandled. I need your perspective before the board meeting next week. But there's more. I want you to consider the human cost behind each decision. Not just profits, not just losses, the real impact on lives. Kendra felt the weight of responsibility settle over her like a heavy cloak. Every choice she made could affect not just Marcus's empire, but the lives of countless people caught in the web of wealth and influence. She realized that the billionaire who had once insulted her in Japanese had now placed trust in her that most people would never grant anyone. Hours passed as she pored over the materials, making notes, connecting dots, and formulating strategies. She realized that Marcus's empire was not merely financial. It was emotional, political, and deeply personal. Missteps could ruin careers, destroy families, and create consequences she could barely imagine. And yet, through it all, she also saw the man behind the wealth, the one who cared, who wanted to do good, who had made mistakes but was willing to face them. Her perspective shifted from fear and awe to understanding. Marcus Whitmore wasn't just a billionaire. He was human, with flaws, regrets, and a need for someone who could help him navigate the complexity of his world. Finally, Marcus spoke again, breaking her concentration. Kendra, you see it, don't you? He asked, voice quiet but urgent. You see the stakes, the risks, but also the possibilities. The chance to fix what's wrong, to protect those who can't protect themselves. She nodded, words failing her. The enormity of the task was terrifying, but she also felt an unshakable determination. She realized that every challenge, every test, every moment she had faced with him had led to this point. She had been chosen not because of her job, her race, or her background, but because she had heart, courage, and clarity. Marcus studied her, a rare vulnerability in his gaze. I have something else to tell you, Kendra, he said, his voice lowering. I've underestimated people before. But you've changed how I see everything. If you accept the next stage, you won't just be helping me or my company. You'll be helping countless lives. And perhaps you'll help me become a better man. Kendra felt a lump in her throat. She had never expected the billionaire who had insulted her to show this level of trust, vulnerability, and honesty. She realized in that moment that this was more than opportunity. It was a test of her courage, her heart, and her integrity. As she left the station lounge, the city lights glittering like stars around her, Kendra knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The tests had revealed more than her skills. They had revealed her own strength, her own clarity, and her capacity to make a difference in a world that often ignored those who truly mattered. And she knew deep down that the real challenge, the one that would test everything she had learned, everything she had become, was still waiting. Because Marcus Whitmore wasn't just testing her intelligence, judgment, or courage. He was testing her humanity. And humanity, Kendra realized, was the most dangerous and most powerful weapon of all. Kendra's hands trembled as she walked into the towering office building, the late afternoon sun streaming through the glass facade. This was it, the final stage of Marcus Whitmore's tests. Every decision, every moment of courage, every instinct she had followed had led to this. She could feel the tension coiling inside her chest, tight as a spring, and the weight of responsibility pressing down like never before. Marcus was already waiting, standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Tokyo. The skyline glowed golden in the waning sunlight, but Kendra barely noticed. All her focus was on the man who had once insulted her in Japanese and now trusted her with matters that could change lives. "Kendra," he began, his voice calm but heavy with emotion. "Today, you will see everything. Not just my empire, not just the decisions that affect lives, but the truth about me, about my family, about why I called you here." She nodded, swallowing hard. I'm ready, Marcus." He gestured toward a large screen that flickered to life, displaying images and documents from the past, family disputes, business betrayals, and financial crises that had been hidden from public view. There were lawsuits, secret deals, and evidence of people who had tried to take advantage of him. But then there was more personal content, letters from estranged family members, photographs of his late sister, and records of decisions that had unintentionally harmed those he loved most. "This," Marcus said quietly, "is the reality I live with. The mistakes I've made, the consequences I can't undo. And now, I need your guidance, Kendra. Not because you're a genius in finance or strategy, but because you have heart. You can see what I cannot. You can see the human cost behind the numbers." Kendra felt tears prick her eyes. This was more than a test. It was a confession. A man who had everything, yet carried a weight few could imagine, was showing her his deepest vulnerabilities. "Marcus, she began, struggling for words. "Why me? Why not someone more experienced?" "Because," he said softly, "someone like you doesn't just see success and failure. You see people. You see the truth. And truth is rare in my world." Her pulse raced as she processed the enormity of what she had been entrusted with. Then came the task itself. Marcus outlined a complex scenario. A former business partner threatening to exploit vulnerable families for profit, a legal loophole that could either ruin or save hundreds, and a timeline that allowed no hesitation. Every decision would have consequences. Every misstep could hurt innocent people. Kendra took a deep breath. She analyzed every document, every detail, every potential outcome. Her mind raced, but her heart guided her. She proposed a series of actions, combining legal pressure, advocacy, and direct intervention to protect those at risk. Every suggestion was grounded in compassion, strategy, and clarity. Marcus watched, impressed. "You're not just making decisions, you're thinking about people. You're considering the lives behind the numbers." That's exactly what I needed to see. As they executed the plan, Kendra realized something profound. Her voice, once confined to serving coffee and small talk, now held power. Real, tangible power. She had helped redirect resources, protect vulnerable families, and prevent harm, all through decisions grounded in empathy and intellect. Hours later, the immediate crisis was resolved. Marcus leaned back in his chair, exhaustion evident in his posture, but a genuine smile lit his face. "Kendra, you've done more than I could have imagined. You've saved lives today, and not in theory, in reality. Your courage, intelligence, and humanity have changed everything." Kendra felt a lump in her throat. I just did what felt right," she whispered, her voice trembling. "That's the difference between you and most people," Marcus said softly. "Most people act out of fear, ego, or ambition. You act out of heart." Then came the twist that Kendra hadn't anticipated. Marcus reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. Inside were documents, legal papers transferring partial oversight of his philanthropic projects to her. "You've earned this, Kendra," he said, placing the papers on the desk. "You're not just my advisor. You're my partner in this work. You'll have authority, responsibility, and the ability to make a real difference every single day." Kendra's hands shook as she read the documents. Tears blurred her vision. This was more than opportunity. It was validation, recognition, and empowerment. The waitress who had once been insulted in Japanese had now become a decision-maker, entrusted to protect lives and guide a billionaire's most important work. But there was one final revelation. Marcus's voice grew softer, almost hesitant. "There's something else, Kendra. Something I need you to know about why I tested you in the first place." She looked at him, heart pounding. "What is it?" He paused, taking a deep breath. "When I insulted you in Japanese at the cafe, it wasn't just arrogance. I was testing you. I needed to see how you'd react. Most people would have frozen, laughed nervously, or cowered. But you," he stopped, searching her eyes. "You spoke up. You challenged me. You showed me that you could hold your ground, even when facing someone more powerful. That was the moment I knew you were extraordinary. Kendra blinked, stunned. You insulted me on purpose. Marcus nodded faintly. It was the only way to see your strength without giving away what I needed. And you passed, far beyond what I could have expected. For a moment, neither spoke. The enormity of it sank in. The insult that had stung so sharply had been the spark that revealed her courage, her intelligence, and her heart. That single act had changed everything, her life, his perception, and the trajectory of their shared work. Kendra felt a smile break across her face, mingled with tears. I guess it worked, she said softly. Marcus chuckled, a rare, genuine sound. Yes, it worked. And now we have work to do. Lives to protect, families to save, and maybe, just maybe, a world to change. As she left the office that evening, the city glowing around her, Kendra felt a transformation deep within. She had gone from a waitress facing condescension to a trusted partner in a billionaire's mission, empowered to impact lives in ways she had never imagined. She realized, finally, that life's greatest opportunities often come disguised as challenges, insults, or tests. And sometimes the courage to stand tall, speak truth, and act with heart is all it takes to change the course of destiny. Kendra James, once underestimated, had not only passed the ultimate test, she had redefined her life entirely. And as the Tokyo skyline shimmered in the evening light, she knew this was only the beginning.